How are you doing? Good. What's your name?
What time are they coming?
Okay. Nice to meet you on that.
We need 3 minutes more.
Okay. 3 minutes more, game 3. But before we begin, since we have this time, I'd love to go around the room and just tell us your name and why you like the game of baseball. What about it? Why do you like it? All right. I'll start off. My name's Daniel. Please call me Daniel. Okay. And I like the game now because my son, blue shirt, he plays, and I love watching him play. I love playing catch. You know that old movie you may have seen, Field of Dreams, you know, and the father and son play catch. In America, there's something about that that's pretty special when you can play catch with your son. So, Daniel, and I like baseball nowadays. I used to play it, but now I like to watch it because of him.
Oh, we're going to be next? Okay.
Yeah, you can go next, buddy.
So, hi, I'm Mike, and
Not Mario. His name's Mike, not Super Mario.
he's just jealous of the fact that I still have my hair here and I have my hair here. So, remember, gentlemen, this is your boy hair. You've had that since you were a boy. This is your man hair. You don't get that until you're a man. Some people are such men, they get rid of all of their boy hair and just commit to the man hair. But, yeah, when it comes to baseball, for me, it was probably one of the first athletic outings that I felt like I had an actual talent in. So it was a lot of fun to, you know, gain the hand-eye coordination as well as, you know, learn how to challenge myself as well as, you know, when you're a hitter, you're up there alone. So it's kind of teaching a little bit to be more resilient, so to speak, especially because you get out all the time.
Alright, so nie wiem czy na polski, I don't know if I should speak
Yeah, it's
English.
English is fine. English, whatever. Oh, English, yeah, English, yeah.
Okay, so right now I'm not playing. I used to play for 10 years since I was 8. The main reason I started is that one day I was sick at home and my colleague from my class called and he just said, "Hey, yo man, there's a baseball team in our primary school. Would you like to join?" Yeah, baseball. I heard about it. It's an American thing. Yeah, why not? And I ended up playing for 10 years.
Awesome.
A lot of happened in my life, so I had to resign. But I still think about it, and when I have time, I like to play, as you, Daniel said, play catch with my dad.
Yeah.
And yeah, it sticks with me. Yeah.
Now, ladies, I know you play different sports, but maybe one reason why you like watching the game of baseball. Is there anything out there that, you know, when the World Series is on, is there something that you like watching?
Yeah, I'm Caitlin, so I didn't play baseball, but I played softball, which I guess is similar enough. But I really like going to baseball games, I guess. It's just something I always did with my family growing up, so I just enjoy watching baseball. And now, like, going to sports medicine, like, working with the baseball team and those athletes and being able to help them, I really enjoy.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
My name's Sarah. I also played softball in high school, and I just really like how dynamic baseball is and the different positions and, you know, batting and fielding and just seeing how all that works together.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm Gavin. The reason I love baseball, I think it's universal language and it, you know, opens doors and opportunities to meet new people and develop long-lasting relationships. And you know, if it wasn't for baseball, I wouldn't be able to do stuff like this.
Awesome.
My name's Tucker. I just enjoy baseball. I like the competitive aspect of it, you know, beating someone, very fun. I also kind of, like Gavin said, the social aspect, whether it be, you know, the team you're on, or stuff like this. You know, I've made, I played baseball in America, made many friends around America, but now made a lot of friends here. So I think it's pretty powerful.
And both those guys play college baseball. Pretty good baseball player.
I'm Bailey, and well, the reason I like baseball is because it was one of the first sports that I picked up as a kid.
That's
I started
awesome.
playing, I think, at 3. We played all the way up through high school, and so it was a lot of fun.
What position did you play? Second base?
Middle infield or something. Yeah.
Cool, man. That's awesome. I didn't know your history. That's awesome.
My name's Matt. I'm not gonna lie, I've never played baseball in my entire life. But I I do like sports medicine, and I like the aspects. And the more I learn about the game, I'm learning that there's a lot of subtlety in there that we can address as healthcare providers. And so this is a great opportunity to learn even more, but also present just that healthcare side to sport, to a specific population. So I appreciate the chance to be here.
Awesome. If you need a translator, can you help?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
English or Polish?
Is your English okay? If you feel comfortable? If not, he can translate. He can translate.
I could try.
Okay.
My name is Paolo. I used to play all my life volleyball, but now I'm trying to learn some baseball. I used to play in the show, so that's why I'm a fresh guy. I think I play 2 months from now. So
Yeah, that's cool.
let's try it.
It's more than me.
So hi, my name is Jarek, and I love baseball because I will quote my first coach here, because it's like chess on grass. It doesn't develop you only physically but also mentally, so that's a huge benefit of playing baseball.
I like that, it's awesome. Man.
Also, we have a guy in the team that played like 500 games in MLB The Show. He knows much more.
So I'm Maya, and
Maya?
Maya, yes. And one day I went to a camp, and there was my first coach where he invited me to team, and I trained to that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you're here, Maya. It's cool.
Hi, I'm Martin. Baseball was my dream from kid.
Really?
Yeah, really, but I found opportunity to play just 5 years ago when team in my city in Poznań just formed. So dreams make true.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and why baseball? I really like throwing. It makes me calm.
Very cool. That's awesome.
Hi, I'm Franek. I think I also love the competitive aspect of baseball, and I think it's a great way to improve yourself as a person.
Oh man.
Obviously, and it's a great way to get to know new people.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that specifically. You know, baseball, many times you fail, right? I mean, at the plate, no one's 10 for 10, right? Heck, if you're 3 for 10, meaning you fail 7 times, you're pretty good. And so to be able to deal with failure, you know, that's definitely a very important aspect to the game, as well as to life.
So hi, I'm Peter. Honestly, I've never thought about why I like baseball. But the first thing that I think about is I could lose my mind learning playing baseball.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's the reason.
Really? That's cool. What position?
Shortstop.
Shortstop, great.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I love baseball because it just clears my mind, and it clears my mind with that I can just play on, and the failure that it doesn't get to me.
That's awesome. And it's almost like you step over the lines, it's like a different life. You don't have to worry about the outside.
It just clears everything.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's cool. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Michał. I played baseball for a year now.
Gram, bo rok temu było ogłoszenie o baseballu w Ośrodku Kultury.
I played because there was 1 year ago there was an announcement here in the college center right here.
I tak wszystko zaciągnęliśmy.
And so me and my colleague just went and signed up.
Very cool. We're glad you're here, man. It's awesome. Good story.
Were you in Nyköping this summer?
No.
No, okay. No, sorry. I'm Peter. How can you not be romantic about baseball? That's what I would say.
My name is Shimon. I never think about why baseball.
Yeah.
I'd start volleyball and baseball both at the same time, but probably I stay with baseball because we have it's individual aspect and team aspect both in the game.
That's awesome.
My name is Petter, and I started loving baseball since my daughter started playing baseball 2 years ago.
Makes it special, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. That means a lot that you guys can share. And thank you for those that may not feel comfortable speaking English, but you tried. Thank you for that. We really appreciate that. Now, what we're going to do today is a little bit different than what we're going to do tomorrow. Today, we're just going to kind of be here and talk a little bit about the importance of the holistic development of your skills to become better athletes, more specifically baseball players, okay? Many times you'll go to a camp or you'll go to a class or what have you, and all they talk about is specific baseball skills. And that's important, it really is. But we think that if you can add all of the aspects to developing as an athlete, watch out. You are going to be so much better than the average person that starts to learn. Make sense? So, today we're going to talk, each of us, we're going to talk 30 minutes. And then when we're done with that, I believe we're going to go get pizza and beer so that we can go and hang out and just talk life, get to know each other a little bit better. And then tomorrow, we're going to have an all-day extravaganza ending with a serious game of wiffle ball. Very important. We've come all this way to play wiffle ball with you guys.
Okay.
Very, very important. Okay, so when we say holistic, this is what we're going to kind of talk about. These disciplines. So, holistic means whole, which means we want to try to develop you as an entire athlete. So, sports psychology, your mind, we're going to talk a little bit about that this weekend. Strength and conditioning, Mike and Gavin will be helping with that topic. All right? Sports nutrition, Mike will also be talking about that topic. Now, injury prevention, right? Matt, Sarah, Caitlin, Bailey, they are all going to work on topics, and that's kind of a broad topic because you guys are going to have a lot of different mini topics within injury prevention, right? And then last but not least, Tucker and Gavin are going to take you out, and we're going to really learn how to pitch better, throw better, hit better, and feel better. Field, not field, right? So when we talk about the holistic development, all of those aspects. Does that make sense? So I'm going to start off, and I want to talk to you a little bit about sports psychology. Real general, because tomorrow we're going to get in depth on how to enhance and be more mentally tough, right? But before I begin, I'm going to tell you a story, and it's a very important story. I'm going to tell you two stories this evening. The first is 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I met that guy, right? Norbert. And from day one, we just clicked. And we clicked because he didn't know English that well, and I didn't know Polish that well, but we clicked because of the game of baseball. We clicked because we had that friendship. You were passionate, I was passionate. And we kept a relationship going to the point where he actually came and lived with me in Georgia. When I was in Georgia living there. Now I live in Kentucky. And when I moved to Kentucky, he asked me, hey, you want to come and bring some professors and talk a little bit about the game? I was like, sure, I'd love to do it. Because he is a passionate person about the game of baseball, which many of you already know that. Now, I used to play baseball, and then I was injured, and Major League Baseball asked me to be an ambassador, right? An envoy coach. And during that time, 20-year span, I've been able to go to 58 countries. All right? Just learn the game, talk to people like yourselves, coach national teams. At the time, try to have governments catch on to the television contracts and the merchandising contracts, right? Just try to infiltrate baseball into countries. And it's nice to know that now it's slowly working its way in regards to the numbers of professional baseball players in Major League Baseball. All right? And I kind of want to talk to you about this because I want to plant the seed right now. I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are. I have stories, gang, of guys that have worked so hard in the game that they were able to either travel to other countries and play the game, I met random guys that I met, became great friends, who were they played in the Republic of Georgia, Russia, former Soviet Republic, and they played college baseball. I know guys, and I'll tell you one cool story where they just learned the game and they worked really diligently, they worked really hard, and they became professional baseball players. So I share that information with you today, knowing, watch out. Again, I don't care how old you are, right? If you're good and you work diligently, they'll find you. Look at these numbers. It's pretty interesting to me. It's not America's game anymore, my friends, right? More than 64% of baseball players under contract to Major League teams were born outside the United States. That's never happened before, right? Americans are the minority in professional baseball. Pretty interesting. More than 35% of players on Major League Baseball 25-man opening day rosters were born outside of the United States. That number has jumped exponentially. MLB estimates that over 40 million, that's a lot, people participate in organized baseball around the world currently. All right? So baseball's still there. Everyone says, well, basketball's now. We're developing the game. Stay with it. It's only going to get larger and larger. Watch. 11 major professional baseball leagues outside the United States and Canada. And one of the things I tell a lot of the American guys, if they're just going to be really average professional Major League Baseball, like minor league baseball players, and they probably won't make it, think about playing internationally. Because some of those leagues are amazing. Australia, amazing leagues. And Italy used to be an amazing league. I just found out that their baseball's kind of going down a little bit. But, I played over there for a little bit, and that was a lot of fun. And so I say all that with the notion that you may not think major leagues, but sure, Germany, Czech, there are a ton of different leagues out there that now you can play. All right, there are opportunities. All right, 22 players. Look at some of these numbers, right? We're from Japan, 10 from Australia, 15 from Korea. That should be 2023, sorry. Further, 341 players on 2023 Major League opening day rosters were born in Latin America or South America. A lot of foreign players. This is interesting. 77 Australians playing professional baseball in the United States. It's really grown in Australia, right? And then 31 players from European countries under contract with Major League clubs. Again, that fluctuates a little bit, but Major League Baseball called them and they gave me the recent numbers, okay? Here's a good story. African baseball players, all right? 6 are currently from South Africa that play. And when I say professional, we're talking about minor leagues, rookie league, single A, double A, triple A, and major league, right? So when they say professional, it's the whole gamut, okay? But I'll tell you this one story of Pele, and you probably heard this 10 times, so I apologize for those that are with me. But I love this story because it's just like you guys. See that little guy on my left, my arms around him, no shoes right there, red shirt? I think he's 13 there, that's Pele. I met him one morning, sun was rising, and I introduced myself to him. And I told him, hey, after school, come with all your friends. we're gonna have a little baseball clinic. And sure enough, he came with all of his friends. And the first time he hit that ball off the tee, saw his bright eyes smile running into first base, fell in love with the game. To the point where I was there for 3 weeks and he was like my shadow. He went to all my government dinners and all the meetings that I had, and to the point where he became a really close little buddy of mine. And when I left, I was able to give him a lot of my equipment, gave him some drills, and the only thing I asked in return was to write me letters and let me know how he's doing, all right? But I told him not to give up, keep going, and then, you know, he left with the statement, one day I play baseball in America, you know? And I was like, I loved his enthusiasm. Wasn't sure it could happen though. I mean, look at the resources that he had. Not much in South Africa at that time in 1996. So, first letter I got from Pele was that they stopped playing baseball in Ndansani, so he had to take a train for 2 hours on Sundays just to play in Cape Town. Next letter was pretty heartbroken. I actually cried when I heard both of his parents passed away, and he was the sole caretaker of his little sister. But the third letter I got, he kept playing, and he made the junior national South African team, which the junior national South African team probably could get beat by one of our elementary school teams, you know, like 20-0, but still, guess what? He got to play in the World Baseball Children's Classic in Japan. So there's Pele being able to play abroad in Japan 3 years from that picture. Pretty cool. And then in the year 2000, he made the national team for South Africa. Kind of cool. But what happened is usually it's the Oceanic champion who plays the African Cup champion, and whoever wins that gets the Olympic bid. But since Australia hosted that year, right, in 2000, Sydney, you were there, I believe, whoever won the African Cup got to go to the Olympics and play in the Olympics. Guess who won the African Cup that year? South Africa. So there's Pele playing in the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia, and they get slaughtered. I mean, the scores are outrageous. The Cubans, the United States, all of them just, they beat them handily. But man, Pele got to play in the Olympics. He got to walk in the opening ceremonies. He got to hang out with all of those elite athletes. But then what happened was, after the Olympics, scouts saw how fast he was. They didn't necessarily care about this. They saw how fast he was. And a Kansas City Royal Scout signed him to a contract. And I'll never forget the day. Never forget it. I was down in Orlando, Florida, and went to his first game. And I yelled out from the stands, and he had to ask the coach if it was okay, and the coach said yeah. And he came, tears. I tell you, I play baseball in America. You know? And I tell you that story. It's true, it happened. He didn't make it to the major leagues. But he went from there, and he got to play in America. He ended up marrying an American woman, and he lives in Chicago now, which is kind of cool. I think he sells insurance and does real well for himself. But if he could do what he did with the limited resources that he had, what can you guys do with that guy and the infrastructure of what we have here in Poland? Okay? I make that challenge to you. But it starts here. It starts in the head. Okay? It starts changing the mindset. And that's what I'm going to talk to you briefly about before I hand it over. When we talk about sports psychology, right, and athletes, sure, some of it is when you go to a psychologist and talk about maybe some issues that you're having with anxiety or off the field stuff. But there's also performance enhancement techniques that you can do to help your mind. And we call that psychological skills training, PSTs, right? And simply put, PSTs refers to the systematic and consistent practice of 5 major skills. And we're going to talk about those 5 major skills tomorrow. But I'll let you know what they are, right? Well, first off, PSTs, what they do is when you practice them, especially in baseball, consistency happens. It helps with that fluctuation, right? And in baseball, as you know, if you can play consistent, whew, watch out. But how many times have you played and you had a great game, and then, man, you struck out 4 times? And then you had an average game, and then you had a good game, and then you struck in. What, if you practice it systematically and consistently, the goal of doing that would be, hopefully, to make sure that those peaks and valleys aren't as high and low, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But when I say practice the 5 skills, we're talking about how to manage our nervousness, how to manage our anxiety, right? Bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, bases loaded, and the score's tied, you're up, and it's full count. You know, do we get nervous? Do we think about different things? Are there somatic things happening to our bodies that will help us not get the bat around, right? Or are we thinking so many anxious thoughts that we're not even paying attention to that ball coming right at us, okay? Arousal regulation techniques, again, which we'll talk about, will help you with those situations. Imagery and mental preparation. Hopefully we can have time to go through an imagery session with you, where, you know, there's an old picture back in the day, and you may have seen, there's a new movie out on Netflix on Nolan Ryan, and man, he was a great pitcher. But he would actually visualize 3 to 4 innings before he would play in the athletic training room, before he'd go out. He'd actually see all of those, you know, pitches and innings in those hitters when he'd know the lineup. He'd use imagery to help enhance his performance. Of course, sorry. That's what happens when you're a little late on this preparation. Goal setting, motivation, and commitment. So we have arousal reg, imagery, goal setting, right? Which I would love to sit down with you and develop a goal setting staircase to help you know exactly what you need to do daily, weekly, monthly, to take steps to get to where you want to do. It's a systematic way. There's a science of goal setting. But what's great about it is if you create that staircase, my friends, it's just checking off behaviors that you can do every day to get you to where you want to be. All right? And the last 2 is confidence training, and we'll really talk about that. And last but not least is concentration. Okay? So when we talk about sports psychology this weekend, we're going to talk about those 5 skills that hopefully you can put in your pocket and learn them and take them out when you need them. Does that make sense? Any questions before I hand it off to Mike? Any thoughts? Let's just review. Remember, baseball is not America's game anymore. It may have got popular, and some will say that rounders was the first type of baseball that started with Native Americans. But when you look at those rosters, a lot of international players, my friends. Second, the 5 psychological skills. Without looking at that slide, who can tell me one of them? Don't look at it. Don't look. Give me one.
Confidence and concentration.
Confidence, that's 2. Confidence and concentration, right? Being able to focus at the right time, as well as think confident thoughts. So there's 2. Who can give me the last 3?
Goal setting.
Goal setting has 3.
Imagine the game.
Yes, imagery. And what's that first one we talked about? We want to regulate what? We want to control arousal, anxiety, nervousness. Right? We'll talk about that tomorrow. Mike, take it away, buddy.
All right. When you think about sports training or anything else, what we're doing is we're applying stress to our body. On the other side of that continuum, we have recovery. Now, stress is not just playing baseball. It's the work or classes you have to go to. It is your relationships. It is going to be the environment you're around. All of those add up. On the other side, we have our recovery, which the biggest 2 factors that you can control that also have the biggest effect is your nutrition and your sleep. Now, I'm going to focus on the nutrition component of this. There's nothing wrong with active rest, with ice, sauna, a bunch of other things which they're going to talk about for more specific recovery modalities, but if an athlete has the option to sleep 8 hours or sleep 4 hours and get an ice bath, the one that sleeps 8 hours is going to do better, just like the one that eats correctly. Think of it along the lines of however hard we're stressing ourselves, we have to be working as hard to recover on the other side. Does that make sense? It's a balance. So when it comes to nutrition, we have our order of importance. We go from the most important factor to the least important factor. When you guys look up here, what is the least important thing when it comes to your nutrition? Indeed. Now, what do you marketed is the most important thing in your nutrition?
I think micronutrients.
Oh, good. I'm glad to know that here they don't market as much of performance supplements and otherwise. In the U.S., I don't think 18 to 20-year-old males can lift weights in the gym without a pre-workout. They can't just drink water. So the biggest factor is initially, are you fueling yourself? Are you getting enough calories? Once we go there, the next big factor is going to be, of those calories we're getting in, how much of them are protein, carbs, and fat? Once we've got that down, then we'll worry about those micronutrients. Are we getting our vitamins and minerals? And then timing our nutrition appropriately throughout the day. Once we've checked all those boxes, then we're going to worry about potentially supplementation. Now, with your nutrition, there's a difference between training for a sport, or your nutrition for a sport, and nutrition for long-term health. Okay? Now, baseball, thankfully, is not a sport where you have to eat in such a way that doesn't work with long-term health. Wrestling and cutting weight is something that it is not a long-term strategy. Being an American offensive lineman is something that is not a good long-term health strategy. So when I teach anybody about nutrition, how you do things as an athlete now is not necessarily going to be how you do things as you get older. So, on the balance, on the left side we've got straight up how many calories we're getting in. Now, from there's things that influence our calories in, such as how hungry are we naturally? Are we someone that eats a lot, someone eats a little? And then, of course, the type of food that we consume. If before every meal you guys were required to eat 1 full pound of raw broccoli, how infrequently do you think you'd eat? Now, of course, if you let your little brother, little sister choose between cake and ice cream or broccoli every night, what will they pick? So there's certain foods that we're just going to naturally probably eat a bit more of. Then we get to calorie absorption, and then, of course, psychological. How many of you guys are stress eaters? Yeah. Yeah, we as Americans have some issues. We're working on it. Okay? So, with those calories in, okay, notice whatever we're eating every single day, that is going to be the base for the calories. At least some of us look to be too young. Alcohol also has calories. I have to say this more for college students, but keeping that in there. Now, calories out is interesting. First and foremost, the biggest part is actually your resting metabolic rate. That's where you're burning most of your calories. Your heart pumping, your diaphragm breathing, your brain hopefully working. All of those are burning calories 24/7. Okay? Now, you then have what's known as the thermic effect of food. It is literally your body absorbing the things you ate, and that takes energy. And then we have what's known as non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which, there we go, now Matt's doing it, thank you, buddy. People that like tapping their feet, constantly fidgeting all day, that actually will burn a couple calories. And it can add up. In fact, some folks, when they're trying to gain weight, they're going to almost look like a human being on vibrate setting because their body is trying to burn off those extra calories. Those are people that have a hard time gaining weight. And then finally, we have straight up exercise. Now, the nice thing is when you exercise, you tend to regulate your appetite pretty well. In that if you're really active, you tend to naturally be a lot hungrier to offset it. And if you're not as active, it goes back and forth. It's when you become sedentary that becomes unlinked. But that's not a problem here. So, at the end of the day, it's just a balance. Anytime we're taking in more calories than we're consuming, we're going to gain weight. Anytime we're taking less calories than we burn, we're going to lose weight. Now, of course, what's the goal of what you're trying to do? And for a number of baseball players, it's maintain their body weights. For some of them, it's enhance. And a rare occasion will be to lose weight. And the key thing is it still comes back to this balance. And then on the bottom right, we see you're going to probably be hungry. So if you're not eating enough, yeah, you're going to lose weight. You're going to be hungry part of the day. If you're trying to gain weight, you're going to be stuffed, you're going to be full. So keep this in mind. If you're trying to gain weight and you're constantly hungry, you're not eating enough. Make sense? If you're trying to lose weight and you're constantly stuffed, and it's not because you did that pound of broccoli before every meal and you hate yourself, you're probably eating too much. Does that make sense? We don't have to get too meticulous, but we want to find a good strategy that's going to work for us. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we can try to figure out how many calories we burn per day. Oh, I love the metric system. So, a good rule of thumb, so like a place to start, is however much you weigh in kilos, multiply that by 7, try to eat that many calories per day. Follow that for a week or two. If you gain weight, then you're a little bit above our expectation. If you lose weight, you're a little bit below. You've got the flexibility, do what works for you. The key thing is, whenever we're looking at this body weight change, we don't want to change it drastically quickly. If we gain weight too fast, like we're trying to bulk up, unless you're on like the Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds drug stack, you're going to gain a lot more fat, aka more things that jiggle, less things that flex. So we want to think about being slow and sustainable, and the opposite is true. If you're trying to lose weight too quickly, you're going to be losing more of that muscle than you want, and you'll still be losing fat, but you're not going to probably become a better athlete from doing so. So when we talk about these changes, and this is an important thing, well, how old are you?
Me or
Him.
how old are you? 12. He's 12.
It's okay. I know far less Polish than you know English. You're doing great. Okay? So effectively, he is still growing. And when he hits puberty and otherwise, that weight's going to come on real fast. Judging from the amount of facial hair we've got from some of the gentlemen in the room, I think we're a little bit beyond that point. So now we're looking at what's realistic. How much lean mass can we gain per month? How much fat mass can we lose per month? And this is when you think about that long-term planning. We talk about that goal setting. If the coach tells you you need to gain 20 pounds before season, sorry, let's use real numbers, 9 kilograms before season, it's not going to happen in a safe way unless we're literally saying this at the end of one season and we've got 10 months to go ahead and put that weight on. Because then we're only talking about less than a kilo a month. So, when you're a baseball player, when do you think is the best time to try to gain weight or lose weight?
In the off season.
Exactly. That's when you can focus on the weight room. That's when you can go ahead and really push your diet. Because once we're in season, we're just trying to hold at where we're at. Now, the preseason, because we're getting into intensified training and otherwise, this might be a good time to kind of lose a little bit of that body fat. If you gained a little bit more than you wanted to lean yourself up, so you're going to be a faster, more powerful relative to your body size athlete. And then when we're moving on forward, the amount of each of these that we want to take in per day is relative to the individual. Now, you guys, as what is characterized as a strength power sport, you're talking about 1.5 to maybe 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body mass a day. Now, if you decide that you want to look really good for, in America, it's known as spring break, you're trying to get lean, you actually want to increase that protein intake to what might be as high as 2.5 grams per kilogram of body mass per day. Now, carbohydrates is the major fuel source that you're using to really push your athletics. So this is the one that matters the most for your performance today. Protein is important for helping you to come back physically stronger tomorrow or the next week. So with the carbohydrates, you probably want 2 grams per kilogram body mass per day just so you're not a jerk and feeling like lightheaded. 4 kilograms of carbohydrate. Let's go, man. Just count out that 4 grams per kilogram of body mass. Well, if one of you guys weighs 100 kilos, we're getting closer to that. No, that's still not. We need to be 1,000 kilograms. Anyways, that's probably when you're just training. You guys have had practice once a day, maybe you're doing weights once a day, but it's not super intense. When you're talking about 2-a-day practices, when you're talking about weights in the morning, practice in the afternoon, taking long batting practice, taking long bullpens, that's when we want to think about increasing this even higher. And then literally the highest demands of carbohydrates you'll see in athletes like the Tour de France, where those athletes are cycling across that entire country. Hey, if you want drug-free sport, do not look at the Tour de France, okay? Lance Armstrong, man, he's the #1, never failed the drug test, but I digress. The last one is going to be fat. Now, fat does more than make you feel self-conscious when you look in the mirror. It's important for actually helping you with hormone production and recovery in general. That should sit at about 0.5 grams per kilogram of body mass per day. And then, notice I gave a bunch of these numbers, and we talked before about how many calories. Now you're going to do the math and realize that I have leftover calories after I factor in how much protein, carbs, and fat I probably need. This is what's known as discretionary calories. This can be going, if you're an American, you'll go get a ho-ho or a Twinkie, There's cliches for a reason. Or, you know, for you guys to be like, you know what, I'd rather have an extra seasoning, serving of dumplings, because man, pierogi, that stuff's good. I like that. So, but obviously pierogi, you've got carbs, you got fat, you got protein, but the key thing is, what do you enjoy, okay?
I have a question.
Yes.
About carbs. Because when you eat too much carbs, you are getting sleepy and you don't want it on the field, obviously.
Absolutely.
So how does it like? It just doesn't matter in this case. You say that we should eat more carbs to have better results on the field.
Good man right there, because this is the next slide. So, we're going to do the carbs first because you had a great question about it. Carbohydrates are something you want to take in evenly throughout the day. But we do not want to do a massive bolus before our workouts, before our training, because what happens is, when you start exercising, you start to use that carbohydrate, the glucose in your blood. As you're working out with that, plus you just had a big meal, your body has dropped in a hormone known as insulin. So you're actually going to drive your blood sugar down, which is why you feel sleepy, you feel tired, and maybe even a little lightheaded if you try to do a big meal and work out. So for any athlete I work with, you want to think about, okay, let's say, judging on your body size, and we're going off that 4 grams per kilogram a day, we're going to figure that you probably need, like, we'll say about 300 grams of carbohydrates. I imagine you got to be at least an 80 kilo guy. Ish. Okay, American, I'm doing my best. So, with the 300 grams of carbohydrates, we're trying to divide that up over 4 meals, so we're talking 75 grams with his breakfast, 75 grams with his lunch. So breakfast, he can have some oatmeal, and that's going to probably hit as many as he needs. Lunch, he's going to have himself, you know, maybe some pasta, maybe some sandwich with a lot of bread, any of those things. The key thing is just getting in those carbs. But he wants to have his last meal before his real workout, before his training, about 2 hours before he does so. Because you don't want to have that issue with that blood sugar plummeting. You don't want to have a bunch of food jumping around in your stomach while you're moving. So what we're going to find is you often want to use what's known as a complex form of carbohydrate. Those digest slower, so it gives us a little bit more even energy as opposed to doing that, 4 kilograms of pure white sugar that I talked about earlier, which sounds like a great way to get diabetes. So we want to go ahead and think about breaking this up, but when we are working out, this is when, if you are a catcher, you're a pitcher, and you're throwing for a while, you might want to think about simple carbohydrates in that workout. So this is where you're doing things like a Gatorade, like, is it Lucozade is another product that's around here, Powerade, not so much? Gatorade? No? What was that? Okay.
Beer.
Whatever is the sports beverage that has some carbohydrates but has electrolytes, and we'll get into why that's important in hydration in just a few. Now, protein, we want to break that also evenly throughout the day with usually about 20 grams per meal. Protein is one of those things that if we only get 1 meal a day, we tend to only make this much progress. We make 2, we make more. If we make 3, we make more. And then 4, we make just a little bit more. 5 and 6 doesn't make a big difference. So hence, at least 3, preferably 4 meals per day that have protein in it. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack either around or after a workout or something before we go to bed. And then finally, we want to do fats pretty much throughout the day as well, but we don't want to do that before our workouts because fat is very slow digesting. And if we do it post-workout, it actually slows down the rate of which we get those carbs in our system, which is what helps us recover quickly. Does that make sense? So in America, we have, it's kind of bro nutrition, like bros, like, I don't know if you guys seen the Jersey Shore. You're not missing anything if you haven't. But literally for myself and some of the athletes I work with, like the workout carbohydrate is like Skittles. It's like gummy bears. Something that's just simple carb, it's really easy for your body to absorb, and you can go real fast. I know you've probably seen that with some of the guys that you guys know around. So, now you brought up micronutrients, which are very important. In the US, and you're going to find, this is also a list of a number of different vitamins and minerals. If I had to take a bet on what people are deficient in, it's going to be vitamin D and magnesium. Vitamin D, aside from getting out into the sunlight exposure, we can get that from eating some mushrooms, fish, and things along those lines, but most people don't have enough of it. The other, magnesium, which we get from eating green leafy vegetables. How many guys have had a vegetable today? Look at you guys. Where are your hands?
I do.
The lettuce leaf on the hamburger doesn't count. I'm sorry, what's that back there?
I took it off. I didn't touch it.
So, we want to make sure that we're getting enough for vitamins and minerals. When in doubt, you could always just buy a real simple like Flintstones or some type of chewable vitamin. It's just making sure that you're getting enough. As long as you're actually eating vegetables on occasion, you're probably going to be okay. But if you're ever deficient, that's when you're going to have a decline in your performance than you would without. So, when we're looking at our timing, okay, pre-workout, that's what we want to do: carbohydrates, maybe protein, and low to no fat. So we want something that's going to be small, easily digestible. This could literally be as simple as you're doing a bagel, okay? This doesn't have to be anything too complex. Some folks like protein shakes, whatever you want to do. When we're inside of that workout, especially when we've got long workouts, we're doing hard practices, we want to be thinking about not just getting in our carbohydrates, but we're adding electrolytes, aka salt. We're talking about sodium, we're talking about chloride, we're talking about potassium, we're talking about making sure we're putting back in what we're losing through sweat. And then finally, after that workout, that's when we want to do a carbohydrate and protein style drink that's mostly carbohydrate with a little bit of protein. Like anything else, you don't have to do this. This isn't as important as just the total calories you're getting in, which is also more important is your macronutrients in the first place. But if you're really trying to fine-tune yourself, get to that next level, these are some of the tools that are going to help you guys get there. Now, the last part of nutrition that we're going to go ahead and talk about before we get into a little bit of hydration is literally what's known as composition. So, in this crowd, I thought that was a decent analogy here. There's a big difference between you doing 100 grams of pure white sugar, you're doing 100 grams of carbohydrates from potatoes, you're doing a pure 100 grams of carbohydrates from broccoli. That's probably going to be like 3 pounds of broccoli. That's a lot of fiber. Hope you got a bathroom that you can use for most of that day. So, most of our better choices are straightforward. We want whole food sources, we want complex sources, we want things that are not incredibly processed. Now, of course, I talked about the simple when we have to other parts of the day with performance, and that's where you're going to see the typical American diet at the bottom, which is the cereals, drinks, and otherwise. But it's relatively straightforward to think about. Like, you can just realize that, yeah, it turns out putting lard on everything is... What was the meal that we almost got? It was lard with onion and mushroom.
And apples.
And apples? Yeah. That was like, as a dietitian, I was like, oh God, like, I can't do that. But I was like, that probably is incredibly good. So, questions here about the time? So, let's talk about hydration. At the end of the day, everybody has to pee at some point. The color of your urine is a pretty decent indicator of your hydration status. The closer it looks like apple juice, the more you need to drink some water. Now, why do we care about hydration? Because when you're dehydrated, you look lean because you don't have as much water with you. Why do we care about it? What goes, technically it goes up, but becomes slower when you're dehydrated. You're thinking, absolutely. But think about, well, that's not important for the sport of baseball, but what tends to essentially not work as quickly whenever you're dehydrated?
Right.
Indeed, but more specifically, your reaction time. You got to have a real quick reaction time to hit a fastball. You've got to have a really quick reaction time to make a play. And so if you're dehydrated, you're going to be more sluggish, not just mentally, but your ability to react. And because of that, you're going to be less likely to make the play. So hence, hydration is a simple thing to stay on top of. Now, you can go heights here, which is literally before your practice, you weigh in on a scale wearing your underwear, and then after practice, you weigh in on your scale wearing your underwear, and you figured out how much weight did I lose. That gives you an idea, like, okay, this is how much you should be drinking, multiplied by about 1.5 to get to how much we need. Or we can go the simpler approach, which is just, once again, we're going to look at and see how our urine looks. Questions there on the hydration side?
Can you drink too much water?
Yes. It is what's known as water intoxication. It requires you to drink about a gallon per hour, end over end, and that can kill you through what's known as hyponatremia. In reality, overhydration is still a risk, but it's a relatively low risk compared to essentially being under hydration. So not it's hypo as opposed to hyper. My advice is drink to thirst. If you find yourself being thirsty, you should definitely drink some water. And you should be, like, if you haven't gone to the bathroom all day, that's a bad sign. So literally frequency of having to go to the bathroom and then the urine color are both really good indicators.
how much is gallon? Like liters? It's like 3 liters? Or?
So 1 gallon is about 3.7 liters. And what we're going to find is how much the gallon thing is more of a bodybuilding row. It depends on your body size. I would start off for most of you guys. Don't even worry about putting a gallon down per day. Instead, just think about how much fluid do I drink. Now that includes water, that includes coffee, that includes juices. You're going to be getting in, and then if you eat like things like watermelon, it's mostly water. So like you're getting a lot of different fluid sources. And if you notice you're somebody that's constantly got that darker colored urine, you need to be drinking water. And the key thing is, if you do one giant bolus, it tends to go right through you. You need to be consistently hydrating throughout the day.
I heard somewhere that you should drink most of your water before like 2 p.m. during the day. And I don't know if that's true.
It's the idea is that if you prioritize something earlier on in the day, you're probably gonna have that momentum moving forward. The biggest water loss that we have is, any of you guys ever weighed yourself before you went to bed and when you first got up in the morning? Okay, I'm weird, fair enough. So what you're gonna find is most people are gonna be losing the most amount of their water weight overnight when they're sleeping. Like you guys see your breath here in the winter. That's you losing a little bit of water every single breath, and you're doing that for 8 hours or so. And so you've literally gone 8 hours without drinking. So it's highly likely that most people when they wake up, they're mildly dehydrated. And so if you're prioritizing your water earlier on in the day, you're getting yourself back up to that appropriate water level quicker than if you just try to tell somebody to just drink the glasses in general, and they'll probably forget about it with breakfast because they're hardly awake and need their coffee instead.
Okay. Should we add something to water, like drink some kind of electrolytes all the time? I mean, I'm adding a little bit of salt to the water, and I do it like all the time. I don't drink like just water. I mean, simple water without salt to me is sweet now. So I don't know if I just do too much salt.
So that's what's really interesting.
But it's not much. Like it's just a little bit like something between 2 fingers, and that's for like 1 liter of water. So most of the people will do it.
The key thing is with the electrolyte component, if people are drinking just pure distilled water, that's something where they can dilute themselves out a bit more. If you're putting some electrolytes in, so by putting table salt, you're taking care of the sodium and the chloride side, but you're not getting the potassium, the calcium, and the magnesium, which are also minerals you sweat out. Now, of course, sodium and chloride being the bigger ones when it comes to muscle cramping, but the other ones are still important. So you don't necessarily have to do a Gatorade, Powerade, or even make your own salted beverage, because a lot of you guys probably get quality or get a decent amount of salt in throughout the day. So if you're somebody that eats like a very vegetarian diet, like raw food, you never salt anything, salt your damn water because you're not getting enough sodium throughout the day. But if you're someone that only eats out of boxes and everything has to be, salted, then like you can probably just drink plain water because you're getting enough before that. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is it just a myth, or should you avoid ice cold water as compared to lukewarm water?
Okay, so ice cold water is useful because it's going to be something that's going to help us drop our body temperature faster if we're overheating. So how many of you guys are catchers? A couple of you guys? Can you imagine if you got done catching a hot game, you come in for the inning, and your coach offers you a glass of lukewarm water? Like, you're just like, so the hotter water and otherwise doesn't really have a positive effect. If anything, it's as cold as they can tolerate. Now, if they get a brain freeze or otherwise, that's too far. But notice when you guys have probably drank a really cold glass of water, you can literally feel it cooling down inside your body, which helps bringing down your body temperature to make you that much more comfortable. So that's a good question, good question. So the last part that I'm just going to kind of briefly get into is supplementation. So if you guys choose to do supplements, you've already figured out how many calories you need. You're getting in your protein, your carbs, and your fats. You're timing things correctly throughout the day. Okay, now we can have the conversation. So we want to make sure that we are taking the appropriate amount of what we're going to try. For a lot of baseball players, it's things like creatine. Now I've got other stuff about this that I can go later, but no offense, I don't have enough time to get into it. And we need to know when to time it. So Gavin and I were having the conversation yesterday of how many of you guys have seen people taking pre-workout? Pre-workout supplements, usually like a caffeine before they work out. Okay, it's all right, it's all right. In the US, we will have, often baseball players, literally walk into the weight room, take out their pre-workout, throw this thing of powder in their mouth, and then wash it down. Yeah, it's called dry scooping. It is the paramount of bro-style nutrition. And I'm just looking at these guys like, you're an idiot. Now, of course, they're an idiot for right, yes, then they get, that's beta alanine that causes the paresthesia where they feel like they've taken meth. Now, what's that? Okay. So really, it's just an elaborate intervention. We want you to get off drugs. No. So the key thing is, if you're going to use pre-workout, we want to make sure that we're getting this in half an hour before we're actually going to lift heavy. So this baseball player is literally taking it right before their warm-up starts. So like they're going to go through their warm-up, they're going to go through their heavy squats, they're going to go through the heavy cleans, and then they're like, yeah, let's do arms. Like, it's not going to hit until they're on the downhill part of the workout, so it's wasted. Now, if you're going to do it, you have to keep in mind, if, no offense, I know they just threw you under the bus, and you are in a safe space. You do not have to share if you do not want to, okay? But do you find that you have to use more and more of it, and you use it all the time whenever you use pre-workout?
Got it.
That's okay. The problem with caffeine is it gives us diminishing returns. Things like creatine, we take it all the time, and we build up to the point where we have as much in our muscles as we're going to get, and then it just holds us there. That's fine. Caffeine is one of those things, the more you use it, the more of it you have to use just to have an effect, and the more you need to use in the first place just to feel like a human. Because I know me as a graduate student, I was probably doing a pot of coffee by myself by the end of my PhD. Straight up had an addiction. I won't be the first to admit it. So the other thing is whenever you can use them, if you're using pre-workout, you're going to be able to train harder. Maybe there's a reason why you can't train hard that day. Maybe you haven't been sleeping as much, maybe your recovery's not there. So the key thing is this can mask fatigue and allow you to work out harder than you should, which can increase your effect on, or increase your risk of injury, and literally not be able to recover as much because you did more than your body could take. And of course, we had a bit of a conversation, which is the problem is a lot of supplements, if they are not third-party tested, they can be contaminated with drugs that will cause you to fail a drug test. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'd just like to add something, if I may, recommendation for you guys, young guys. It's the importance of asking your coach, your nutritionist, your dietist, somebody who knows, instead of asking your best friend's big brother. Because he may not be involved in organized sports and not not being bound by anti-doping rules, but you as athletes are, and you have to be careful with what you take. So it's important you get the recommendation from the right source.
Folks, we're not throwing anybody under the bus, okay?
I'm
here to
just
learn. No, it's a real thing that happens in the U.S. where there'll be college athletes that were recommended to take blank by their bro, and it turns out it is a substance that caused them to fail a drug test and lose their college scholarships in order to play their sport. And it wasn't like they were even trying to use those substances to be sketchy, it's just unfortunate one of those things that happen. So literally, of the list of things that work, it's really caffeine and creatine, and then there's a couple others that might have a slight effect. But the reality is, if an athlete comes up to me and asks about supplementation, the first question I actually have for them is, what did you have for breakfast? If they go like, I didn't eat breakfast, we're not talking about supplementation, you need to fix your diet.
Yeah.
Make sense? I'm like, okay, they're like, they had breakfast, cool, how many calories did you eat yesterday? I don't know, I had like a whole pizza for dinner, and like, I had like chicken fingers for lunch. Like, okay, cool, you need to figure out your macros and get that. Makes sense, so like, let's focus on the things that matter. Now, if there's anything wrong with your pre-workout use, well, let's slowly bring that back. So you only use it when you need it, because the key thing is if you lean on it every time, now you've got a crutch. Now you've got something that is going to be in your head, because maybe like, oh, I forgot my pre-workout before my game. And then that's going to be something that's working against the psychological side of it, which can cause lower performance. So hence, we're trying to avoid those types of dependencies. That was really quick. What questions do you guys have for me? I'm going to be around all weekend. We can always talk nutrition. I find it to be interesting. Do not pay attention to how much pizza I'm eating this evening. Okay? That is not me judging you or you judging me. Okay, we're just going to have fun, live life. But is there any other questions you guys would like me to go and talk about?
And always, gang, you can pull us aside if you have specific questions. You know, we'll try to answer as much as we can. But to keep it going, Matt, do you want to take the next slide?
All right, well, I'm getting set up. I want you guys to go ahead and stand up, find somebody you don't know, and I want you to just ask them about a time that they got injured in sport. Okay? And so share stories, swap stories about an injury, and I'll get it set up.
Stand up. First, stand up. Never be injured.
And so we want to talk about that concept, and we're going to talk about a couple of different areas. I'm going to be presenting with Sarah, Caitlin, and Bailey. They're all going to be jumping in here, but we're going to go ahead and get moving. So in general, when we talk about injuries, they're categorized in a couple of different ways. We'll call them acute or chronic injuries. Sometimes you'll see things like macro trauma or micro trauma. So when you think of macro, we think large, and when we think of micro, we're thinking small. In essence, what these are is, you can see it up here in a definition, it's talking about dynamic overload. And Mike, Dr. Lane was talking about stress earlier, and that's really what injuries are. They're stress. And so when we think about macro or acute injuries, those are the ones that are going to happen, and it's a large force. Something big comes up, there's no stopping it, it happens instantaneously, and ow, I'm hurt. Okay, so if I'm stepping up to the plate and I got hit with a pitch, okay, I can't really, the pitcher could avoid that, hopefully, all right? I could step out of the way, I might try and avoid it, but if I get hit, that's instantaneous, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna leave a bruise, possibly something worse. That's macro trauma. Okay, so when you guys were swapping stories, how many of your injuries were macro trauma or acute injuries? Things that happened instantaneously, things that you were like, oh man, that hurt. Okay, so a couple of you. All right, micro trauma are going to be the injuries that occur that build up over time. So I start to get a little bit of stress, or force starts to build up in my tissues, my muscles, my ligaments, my bones. They can't quite handle that stress. And so they start to break down and they wear down just a little bit. But I'm not smart enough to stop, so I keep going. and it wears down just a little bit more, and then it wears down a little bit more, and eventually it crosses this threshold where that tissue starts to tear, it starts to pull apart, or inflammation starts to occur. All right, so these are the injuries that occur over time. Okay, so throwing pitches, using maybe some wrong form, and you start to feel it in your elbow, you start to feel it in your shoulder, okay, but you don't want to stop, you don't want to disappoint the coach, you keep going, you keep throwing, you keep trying to throw harder, and eventually, over time, and I'm not talking just one inning, one game, we're talking weeks, okay, this injury starts to build up, and eventually, you can't handle it. All right, and so that's kind of the essence of what we're talking about here, is this idea of stress. Now, when Dr. Lane or Mike talks tomorrow, he's going to talk about this idea of stressing your body in order to build performance. Okay, and that's important. When you go and you work out, okay, you stress your body. But if you give it time, your body gets stronger. When we talk about the injury side of things, we don't give that body enough time to recover, especially with these micro traumas. And so eventually over time, what happens is your tissue starts to lead towards exhaustion. So we think about tissue health, and when I say tissue, I'm talking muscles, tendons, bones, ligaments. Eventually they just start to break down, and if I break them down too far, okay, they completely tear, and it's difficult to recover from that. All right, so what we're going to do over the course of tonight and the course of tomorrow is hopefully give you guys some practical ways that apply specifically to your sport on how to avoid that. So if we can, we want to prevent the injury. Okay, like I said, I step up to the plate, I get hit with the pitch, I may not be able to avoid that. But if I start to feel my tissue being affected, if I feel different, I can stop myself, and there are some ways in which we can do that. So that's what we're going to talk about as we move forward.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 ways that you can prevent injuries. So the first is pitch count. So pitch count was basically put into practice to prevent injuries. So it's the number of pitches that you can throw, a baseball pitcher can throw during a game. So research studies have established a link between throwing volume and shoulder and elbow injuries among youth baseball pitchers and even just baseball in general, baseball players in general. So in addition to monitoring pitch count, there are numerous other things that pitchers can do to prevent injury. So the first one is compete no more than 9 months out of the year. So we have 12 months in a year. So the idea is to not do competitive baseball all year long. To take a break, to let your body rest. You know, we've talked about stress on, muscles, ligaments, tendons, bones, all that. The idea is to rest and to let your body heal. And that doesn't mean to completely not do any physical activity, but to just take a break from the sport, from the same repetitive action over and over. The second thing is to develop and maintain good mechanics. And I think that one of you guys tomorrow are going to, Gavin tomorrow is going to work mainly on working on good mechanics and developing those and making sure your pitching mechanics are right and everything like that. The third one is continue physical conditioning year round. So like I said in the first one, not competitive baseball all year round, but you can continue to do other sports. So like one example is like basketball. Basketball is a different sport, but it can also contribute to your spatial awareness. So like in baseball, you have to be aware of, the playing field. Well, basketball can help you with that. Another one I like to use is like ultimate frisbee, or just throwing a frisbee. It continues to help with, your batting motion, with the rotation of your hips. Well, when you throw a frisbee, you're doing the same thing. So you're not still doing the same sport, but you're still working on, some of those good skills or mechanics for when you do play. The fourth one is only pitch in 1 game per day. So again, like we were talking about with repetitive throwing motion, if there's multiple pitchers on a team and you have say you have 2 games, like a tournament, so 2 games in 1 day, making sure that one pitcher pitches the first game and then another pitcher pitches the second game. So again, it's not that overload of stress on your body. The fifth one is avoid showcase participation. And so what this means is avoid going to, if they're, scouts are coming to watch you. Avoid they like to say avoid those because that is whenever you're putting, you're going all out. So you're putting even more stress on your body by trying to impress. So avoid those. And then the last one is only participate in one team per season. So in America, we have a lot of different travel teams and school teams and just a ton of different teams that you can join for multiple different sports. So a good way to get injured is to participate in every single team that you can. And so a good rule of thumb is just to participate in 1 year, one team per season. So next we'll move on to, here is a chart to show the pitch count by age group. This is USA. I imagine that Poland is somewhat the same, but it has anywhere from ages 9 to even up to 22, and how many pitches per game is recommended for each age group, per game, per week, per season, per year. And then next is communication. So a big thing is communicating to your coach on how you feel. So a lot of times we have, the normal aches and pains, normal soreness, but it's those times whenever something just doesn't feel right, and making sure that you're letting your coach know or your parent know or whoever. But some of those things we're going to talk about. So one thing is pain at night when sleeping. And so this means you may have just came home from a hard practice, you're feeling, kind of tired, whatever. But I'm talking about pain, your shoulder, your elbow hurts so much that you can't even go to sleep. Or it wakes you up from your sleep that you're just you wake up in the middle of the night and you've got so much pain that you can't stand it. Tell somebody about that. Anybody ever had painful popping in their shoulder or elbow? Or just popping in general? I know I do whenever I clean my shoulder. Yeah. So whenever, we all have, our normal popping, stuff like that. But whenever you experience that painful pop, that's another thing you want to let someone know about. Pain that even prevents you from playing. So again, we talk about soreness and that sort of thing, but if it's so painful that you can't do the motion or whatever, that's another thing you want to communicate. Next, numbness or tingling. We have a lot of nerves and stuff that run through here. So if you can't, if you can't feel your fingers or you get that tingling sensation down your arm, you should also communicate that with your coach. Next one, you can't throw as hard as normal. So again, some days we're more motivated than other days. Some days we have, different stressors in life and our social life that, kind of get us down in the dumps. We have our good days and our bad days. So, but it's those days, those consistent days when you notice I was pitching at this consistent speed for this many days in a row, but now it's just a downhill for a week or so now. So that's whenever you also want to let your coach know. And then a couple of last things is just constant pain. It's just hurting all the time and it won't go away. And then another one, the last one is what we like to call cardinal signs of inflammation. So if your hand is extremely cold and you're not just sitting in a freezing room or something, but if you're playing or whatever and your hand is just freezing cold compared to the other one, that's a sign. Any inflammation or swelling, within your arm or shoulder or elbow. And if it just looks funny, if your hand looks funny or your elbow or something, that's when you also want to let your coach know. So the third prevention technique is called thrower's tent, and we're gonna go more into depth for this tomorrow. And this is just a really good warm-up you can do before you start playing. So it's a series of exercises that incorporate throwing motions and movement patterns that are involved with pitching or throwing. And this works not only the shoulder, but also all aspects of the body, because the body works together to create one motion. These exercises help to strengthen, stabilize, and activate the muscles needed in pitching, as well as help with muscular endurance, flexibility, and coordination. So not only are we helping to strengthen our muscles, you got a ton of muscles within your back and your shoulder and everything. So these exercises are going to help with strengthening that, but also stabilizing your shoulder, because your shoulder is a ball in a socket, and we have to strengthen these muscles surrounding it so it doesn't, slide out or anything like that. And then these exercises are evidence-based. They target all specific muscles needed in pitching and throwing, and can be performed anywhere with no equipment except for a simple resistance band. And again, we're going to get more into depth with that tomorrow. We're going to kind of go through this program and show you guys how to do the exercises, what to exactly look for and focus on, and tell you how many times you need to do it per day, and that sort of thing. So next is injury prevention through recovery.
So I want to talk to you guys some about recovery. So Dr. Lang or Mike already kind of talked about it a little bit, but kind of like what is recovery and why is it important? It's like the most basic to recovery is like the normalization of the nature of muscle. So basically you just getting back to your baseline, like you feeling 100%. And like the reason why you want to do recovery is because you run that risk of overtraining. If you're constantly like going and constantly putting stress on your body, like even earlier in the slide, you're going to hit that point of the peak where you're just going to go downhill and you're overtraining yourself. You're not going to be performing at 100% or at your best. So there's three main different types of recovery. We have proactive, passive, and active. So proactive is kind of all the stuff that you guys are doing on your own, like you're self-initiating it based on like your own needs. So this is, we'll get more into depth in each of these. Passive is external methods or just complete rest, so things that are being done to you, or like your arm and your shoulder or your legs. And active is anything that you're doing to increase your heart rate, so different types of activity. All three of them are important. Actually, proactive I'd say is the most important, and you can do a combination of all three. You can just do proactive, you can do proactive and passive, any combination, but it's just kind of based on your own needs and whatever helps you feel the best. So first we have proactive recovery. So like I said, it's goal-oriented, based on your own needs. So this is your sleep, your nutrition, social activities, so doing other things outside of like baseball, for example, that on your rest days, kind of help you kind of recover and reset from that. And I just kind of have like the example of like the stress cup here. So there's a lot of like different stressors in our life. Instead of work stress, it would be school stress, different things like that. So if we can take care of the poor sleep, take care of the bad diet, that kind of leaves more room for that stress of your high intensity activity or playing baseball and working out. And so if you're doing adequate recovery, you won't run that risk of your cup getting too full and then you're in that overtraining and then that decline on that curve that you saw earlier. So we also have passive recovery. So like I said, these are external things, so like either just complete rest from activity, like taking a complete day off if you just had a really hard game, you guys get an off day. Otherwise there's things like compression. So like here's a picture of like a Normatec. It's a very popular kind of recovery tool that's used in America. So it's just like a big compression sleeve, or if you have like I don't know, like wear compression sleeves. A lot of people do it for like elbow pain, swelling, or just anything that kind of is like tighter fitting sometimes can help, and that's usually done right after activity. So if you pitch, put one on or wear one. Massage, we'll kind of go into that a little bit tomorrow, maybe like show you guys how to like massage your arms, massage shoulders a little bit. And then stretching upper and lower bodies, because obviously in baseball you're not only using your arm and your shoulder, it's all on your hips and legs and everything like that. So you're doing full body activities, and we'll go into some different stretches to do as well. And then after recovery, so this is anything that's increasing your heart rate. Obviously there's like a goal to kind of stay in between. The whole idea of active recovery is you're doing stuff to kind of offset whatever you just did. So obviously if you're a pitcher, a big thing is like going for a run then afterwards, like a light jog just to kind of increase your heart rate a little bit, and it's stressing a different part of your body than just your shoulder, so it's offsetting what you just did to your shoulder and your arm. Doing like a lower body workout the next day, like focusing on that and not doing any upper body things. And again, like kind of Sarah mentioned earlier, like doing non-baseball focused exercise, so don't do any like throwing, pitching, batting, different things like that, like going out and playing frisbee or going out just for a run, different things. And another thing for active recovery is I was fortunate enough to work with someone that has worked for Major League Baseball and as an athletic trainer, and he shared with me their MLB arm care that they have all of their pitchers do anytime they throw after a game or throw bullpens, different things like that. And so I'll show you guys the different exercises that they do to kind of help take care of their arms and shoulders as well.
So before I get started, I want to ask, is anyone in here a pitcher besides Gavin? So you're a pitcher? So when you're pitching, are you utilizing just your shoulder when you're performing the throw? Correct.
From the feet.
Correct. So that is what I'm going to focus on with indirect prevention because, as he said, the body works as a chain. So you start at your feet and it goes all the way up through your feet, through your core musculature, up into your shoulder. So those micro trauma issues or injuries that can occur, like Dr. Saban mentioned earlier, those are what we would classify as chronic. And so with a chronic injury, it may not always be an issue with the shoulder. It could be improper biomechanics, which Tucker and Gavin will focus on tomorrow or later tonight, showing you the proper throwing motion. It could be from a weakness in your core musculature, hips, calves, feet, ankles, anything like that can create an alteration in the throwing biomechanics, which can create extra stress on your elbow and in turn on your shoulder. So, as I mentioned, anything that has to do with uneven hip positioning or unequal distribution of hip strength, say you have one leg that is stronger than the other, your throwing mechanics and your throwing motion could be altered to a sense that your arm is having to compensate to generate enough force or velocity that you are able to perform at the level you want. And then same thing with ankles and feet. If you have ankle instability when you plant, it could create some sort of driving issue because as you plant to go off the mound, you're driving with your foot, but if you have ankle instability, and it could create some imbalance as you're pushing off. Here are just some quick exercises that we can do. We will focus more on this tomorrow, just to work on strengthening your hips and glutes, as well as your ankles and feet. So I did mention the core musculature is involved. So my next question is, when we're talking about the core, what do you guys think I'm talking about?
About the core?
Yes. So when you hear the word core musculature, what is your immediate thought?
Is that the torso?
Yes.
Back muscles, also back muscles.
Correct. Most people will typically just say it is your abdomen musculature, so your abs and then your sides right here. But the core is technically anything that has origin or insertion along the spine. And if you see in this picture here, you can see all the musculature and how if it works on the opposite foot to the opposite shoulder. So if you're, say, left-handed, the core crosses through and goes to your right foot, versus if you're right-handed, it goes through and crosses to your left foot. And then, again, we have some core exercises that we can work on tomorrow to help strengthen the core musculature to help correct any issues with biomechanics in normal throwing, or specifically in pitching biomechanics with Kadra. And then in conclusion, even if we follow these tips that Sarah mentioned with injury prevention, injuries can still occur. Those macro traumas of just getting hit with the baseball, those can still occur. But the research does show that when preventative programs are in place, the risk of injury is significantly lower. So that's what we're attempting to do with we're implementing these prevention programs. We're wanting to decrease the likelihood of those micro trauma injuries, whereas those macro trauma injuries typically are less likely to avoid. When it comes to recovery, we want to make sure that the body is prepared for the next stress that it has. So say you pitched on a Monday, you're going to utilize those next 3-4 days of recovery to prepare yourself to pitch, say either during the weekend or the following Monday, depending on how your pitch count that Sarah mentioned earlier is at for the week. And then preparing the kinetic chain, which is that crossover from one shoulder to the feet, is essential in decreasing those micro traumas that can occur from improper throwing techniques or improper pitching mechanics. Any questions? For all four of us? Yeah. So you might want to step out.
I'm good, because you guys are going to answer them.
All right.
Yeah, I have a question for Sarah.
All right.
There's always been a lot of talk about limiting the number of pitches. In Sweden, we have already started talking about the combination of a pitcher who then, when he's not pitching, he or she goes to catching. Because with youth baseball, it's two key positions, and it's usually the best catcher is also the best pitcher, right? So we have introduced a rule that says you cannot pitch and catch in the same game. Do you believe that to be true, or do you think that would it be okay to, if you say you can only pitch in one game a day, could you catch the second game, for instance?
You might have to jump in here, but I would say that, the pitch count is in place for a reason because of like we were talking about, the micro traumas. So the stress that's placed on the body after the repetitive throwing. So it's like if you're a pitcher, you did that and you just switched to another position, you're still doing the same throwing motion. So I would say that's a good rule to put in place to say, hey, you've already done this number of pitches, you've created that micro trauma within the shoulder. So it's like, let's stop for the day and recover so that instead of just, continuous throwing of the shoulder.
I'm going to actually kick it over to Gavin because I want to hear what he has to say, having pitched in college, and then I'll give my perspective.
So feel free to correct me if I'm spouting out any myths, but I think from what I've been told, there's a difference between throwing on a flat surface and throwing on a slope. So when you're throwing on a slope, it's going to cause a lot more stress on your shoulder. Throwing on the flat, I do think that the rule of not pitching and catching in the same game is very important. I don't think they should do that, but I think that you'd be safe. Let's say if you brought your catcher in to close the game out, like come out of the bullpen or a relief pitch. I think that'd be more safe than letting them throw like 3, 4, 5 innings. Kind of going on top of what they were talking about with pitch count too. I like to look at it as, yes, you don't want them to throw more than 60, 70 pitches in an outing, but you also want to limit high stress outings. Innings, I mean. So
The number of pitches in an inning.
The number of pitches in an inning.
Yeah.
So yes, if let's say you have a guy who goes out and it takes him 40 to 45 pitches in an inning, that's a high stress inning, and probably want to get him out of the game after that inning. Because I don't think in that time frame he'll have enough time to recover, and you're putting him at risk. But I also think you have to take into account how much time you have in between games. Because let's say you have an 8 a.m. game, the guy pitches, probably by 2 p.m. he would be good to catch, because throwing it back to the pitcher isn't as stressful because you're not trying to strike someone out throwing it back to the pitcher. Where the stress is going to be is like on a back pick trying to throw a runner out, something like that. So I think that you all are being safe and not sorry right now. I think there's a lot of validity to not letting guys catch and pitch in the same day, because I think if you give people the option to do that, they'll abuse it. So I think you're on the right path. So am I wrong in any of what I've...
No, I think you're actually spot on. The hard part about making a rule is there's always going to be some situation that doesn't fit it perfectly. And so, yeah, if you have a pitcher that goes in for 1 inning, comes out, have they accumulated enough stress to really keep them from catching? Where he says, throwing it back to pitcher, not that bad. How many times are they trying to get somebody out at second? So in that case, they don't have a high level or a high number of really forceful throws that they're doing in a game. They're probably not going to accumulate enough stress for injury. But if you do have that pitcher that's been in innings 1 through 7 and then comes out and then they're like, oh, we're going to put you a catcher, Yeah, there's definitely a potential risk there. And as a organization for safety, sometimes you have to implement the rule to try and protect against those instances. And there definitely is a difference between throwing mound versus ground.
We can keep this topic going, but I know that they have a couple things scheduled, and we'll get this last session in before 7 because we have a special thing going on at 7. So thank you guys rocked. Thank you so much. Fellas, do you mind coming up here with your chairs? And this is going to be a special session, only because I've done this in the past and it's really worked out well, where we're going to allow 2 guys who played big-time baseball to be here and answer any question. I mean, any question that you have about the game, about how to get better, about dreams and goals. There are no ignorant questions. Do not be afraid. This is a safe space, as Mike was saying, and no one will laugh at your question. You just sometimes need to have an opportunity to ask elite baseball players questions that you've always wanted to ask. So is there anything that you've always thought about asking somebody who's played the game and has done well in the game that maybe you'd like to ask? Anything out there that you can think about?
It doesn't have to be about baseball. It can be about like I guess the culture of baseball too. So
like when you come in a game like pinch hitting, how do you keep your cool when it's like a ninth inning?
you're nervous, right?
Yeah, you're nervous. How do you keep your cool?
So we were talking about this earlier with Peter. There's virtually no difference between nervousness and excitement, right? You're the psychology guy.
Yeah,
right?
well, it looks on a continuum of arousal, right? You have positive stress and you have negative stress, right? So it's how you perceive that arousal. So you're excited, right? Is it negative, where it's going to debilitate performance? Or can you take that and turn it and maybe let it enhance you?
At the end of the day, you're nervous because you care, right? You care because you're trying to help your teammates win. You care because you're trying to impress your coach. And you care because you're a baseball player and you want to succeed. So I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to perception, right? Good hitter gets out 7 times out of 10. So just because you get out doesn't mean you're a bad hitter, or you're going to walk in the dugout and your teammates are going to be like, oh, dude, you suck. Like, no, anyone put in that situation is going to be nervous, right? I think that's a good question for Tucker. Tucker hits and is still like a college hitter and is in that situation all the time. So.
No, for sure. Talk specifically pitch hitting, right? Coming off the bench. Yeah. That's very stressful because you haven't been playing. When you're playing the whole game, you get in a flow rhythm, and you kind of know what to expect. But coming off the bench, you really just got to kind of keep your same process. We'll probably talk more about it tomorrow with some psychological training. But like mine, for example, I make sure to just take a huge deep breath. Know where you are. I have my bat. I look at one spot. We have stickers on our bats for games, so I look at one sticker. Look at the bat. Do a little press swing. And ready to go. And have a plan, stick to your plan, and just, if you have your process and you can stick to your process, then that's half the battle right there.
So you have a pre-swing routine you do almost every time, is that correct? No matter if it's a pinch hitting situation or if you're in the game.
We're up by 20.
Yeah.
Game, same thing.
Yeah.
Repetition.
And it's interesting, we've done some research on pre-shot or pre-performance routines, and we really have found significant differences between those athletes who keep the same routine, whether it be free throws, whether it be hitting, right? Whatever close type skill, sport skill, we find significant performance differences between those that keep the same exact routine versus those who don't have one, or those who change it up, right? So the research has shown the power of what Tucker's doing. Good question. Other questions? Anything that you can ask?
I'm wondering because a routine can be a very bad thing for a pitcher. For example, if you take the same time between, like, you get to the set position, and some pitchers are taking like 4 seconds, and if they are left-handed, it is in the home plate because it's blocking. So how do you approach that as a pitcher?
As a pitcher, so you're talking about timing.
I mean, do you have a routine between pitchers? Do you have something like this? Because some pitchers do.
Yeah. So I guess like you said, it kind of depends on the situation, right? You know, if you have a runner who is a risk to steal, you don't want to take as much time. But you also have to understand that as a pitcher, you control the game speed. So I wasn't a big routine guy. I came in most of the time in bullpen situations, so my routine was more in the bullpen, getting prepared for the game than it was actually in game. We were talking about a razzle regulation, where some guys need more stress to perform and some guys need to be more calm. I was a guy that preferred stress. I like going into the situation and feeling the butterflies in my stomach. I thought that it gave me, I thought I performed better because I didn't have to think as much. You know, when I was more relaxed, I thought more. So really, mine was more resetting. So let's say I get behind on a batter that, in a crucial spot, you know, runners on second and third, we're in a tie game, I get called in, I fall behind against the batter. I like to take a second off to take, like, it's very similar to hitting. Take a step off, reset, recalibrate, refocus, and go back on. I think a lot of the times that if you're too focused on the last pitch or the next pitch, you can't perform in the pitch that matters the most, which is the current pitch.
Here's a question I have. What have you guys done over the years by yourselves to get better, specifically, whether it be a position player or a pitcher? Were there daily things that you did, whether to help your swing, whether to help your defense, whether it be to help your throwing, where you didn't necessarily need other people?
You want to start?
Well, baseball related, I have kind of a routine I like to do off the tee before game, for practice. Before I hit, I do a lot of stretching, kind of yoga stuff, really focus on my breathing. And then I have a routine I like to do off the tee, and if after I do that off the tee, I normally feel pretty good about my swing and kind of get that rhythm. And it's like I said earlier, once you're going up to the plate, or you're just going to make a play in the game, you kind of have a process going.
How I approached my baseball week is any scheduled practice was extra work. I had my own schedule that I performed throughout the week. That was my practice, what I perceived as practice. Anything that I did with the team, I perceived as extra work. Because I knew that if I was just doing what everyone else is doing, I was only going to be as good as everybody else. Anything that I did outside of that is where I was truly going to separate myself from the pack. So,
that's a huge statement. Do you guys get that?
Yeah, but then you need rest.
Say that one more time.
You need rest to prevent leaking.
Yes, but rest is still work.
Yeah, like he has a rest cup.
Yes. Rest is still work. Yeah, rest is still work. So that whether that be bands, that be yoga, that be imagery. I was huge on imagery. I like to see myself striking out everybody before I even got in to throw a pitch.
So you're not just pitching more.
Not just pitching, yeah. Routine doesn't always have to be physical. How you eat, getting in and working with the athletic trainers, knowing where you're at. Dr. Saban talked about mixing things up. As much as you have to be in tune with yourself, you also need an outside perspective. So going and seeing the athletic trainer, going and seeing your dietitian, that's all work that you do outside. It's not always just lifting weights and doing physical activity, but that is the stuff that you do outside of practice that sets you apart from everybody else.
That's good. And this kind of goes along the same question. You're kind of seeing the infrastructure of Polish baseball now. You know Norbert, and Norbert's told you some things. You're kind of seeing the guys here, somewhat limited resources. If you were them, knowing what you know of what it takes to get to where you guys are, what would you suggest they do?
Find your favorite baseball player and watch them all the time. Seriously. If you don't watch baseball regularly, buying into that. Knowing the game, there's plenty of baseball players who have their own podcast and who have their own YouTube channels who show you what they do every day of the week, and adopting some of the drills and some of the routines that they have in place to fit your own personal needs. I'm trying to think. I'm having tip of the tongue right now. Max Scherzer. Who knows Max Scherzer? Yeah. So, have you ever seen a Max Scherzer bullpen?
That's crazy.
It's the best thing in the world. So he has his pitching coach standing next to him, and every time he makes a good pitch, he goes, boom! Every time he makes a bad pitch, it's dead silent. Because he wants to reinforce that I'm only going to make good pitches, which I thought was awesome. But there's other, so like Trevor Bauer. I'm sure you all know who Trevor Bauer is. He's a big driveline guy. Driveline works for some people, doesn't work for other people. Driveline is a weighted ball program. It's a weighted ball program that pitchers use to develop velocity and protect their arms. Another one is called Velocity Plus. It's like Mike said, a marketing material. But you know, taking it holistically, you have to know what works for you. So yes, there's a bunch of trial and error involved, but you have to talk to people like Dr. Saban, Mike, people who are professionals and who have spent a lot of time and know what they're talking about, not just your older brother's friend or someone like. There's a lot of guys who would come back from major leagues at the program that I was at, and they would want to give you the secret recipe for what they did to throw 100 miles an hour. That program is not designed for you, it's designed for them. So knowing what helps you is the most important. So
what would you do, Tut?
Yeah, building off of Gavin's, definitely, I know, I think I was talking to Norbert and Coach Peter about how kind of watching baseball here can be kind of hard. Time difference, buying the passes to watch MLB games, but as much as you can, just learn the game. But also just make it as fun as you can. Anytime you have access to it, even if you don't have a glove or a bat or a ball, just do something with baseball. Like I remember we were in gym, we didn't have our gloves or baseballs, we just had a tennis ball. We throw it at the wall, play called wall ball. Just baseball actions, but it was fun, no stress. It was just, that's what baseball is, it's fun. Make it fun and just play as much as you can.
And the fact that you guys, some of you are playing MLB, it's awesome.
MLB show, exactly, yeah.
Shit, dude. Yeah.
I love playing.
Get to know the players, probably better than most Americans, just because you know their averages and so forth, and you get the specifics on each player. It's kind of cool.
Okay, so I have a question that can you tell us how is your warm-up looking?
Off the tee?
For the game.
For the game? Well, if I have a game, it kind of starts when I wake up. I try to, they say the first battle you can win is making your bed. It seems very small, but if I make my bed, that's a win for me today. I'm 1 for 1 already. It's simple, but it's, a lot of stuff like that. But kind of like Gavin said, like for practice or even games, like we have a set time to be there. I try to get there hour, 30 minutes early. I like to do my stretch, like I said, I like to do some yoga, really just kind of focus on my breathing, being present, being at the field. And as soon as I walk through the gates, that's baseball time. School, homework, job, money, girls, it's out there, man. You're at the field, you're with the boys, that's it. So, yeah, really just kind of mentally being there. And then the physical stuff comes obviously like stretching. Just get warm, get the blood flowing, do some sprints after you stretch. I have a throwing routine. Everyone kind of has a different routine, but my throwing routine is a little different. Kind of start short and then stretch it out. And as you're throwing, try to hit the guy in the chest, work on my footwork, which we'll go over tomorrow. And just kind of always be doing something leading up to the game. There's especially in college ball, there's a lot of downtime. We're taking batting practice on and off the field. So just try to do as much as you can to stay warm and just be ready and have fun.
Good question. Anything else that you guys can think of?
how to have a plan at the plate and how to keep with it. Like you have a plan, then you go to 2 strikes and you're just all around the place.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. One thing me and him worked with as I was growing up, if I wasn't sure about my plan, your plan is really what you can control. So my plan is the only thing. I can't control what the pitcher's going to throw. I can't control, who's on base. I can't control any of that. All I can control is my plan. And so the one thing I could control is I'm going to take the first pitch. I don't care if it's right down the middle. I don't care if it's behind me, up at my face. I'm not going to swing the first pitch. That's my plan right there. That's, like I said, a simple win, 1 for 1 right there. I won. So, well, whatever your plan is, you just got to make sure you stick to it. If you want to inside fastball, you don't swing until you get that inside fastball. Or if it's based on the game you're playing, if I'm a lefty or righties as well, if there's a runner on second, I'm going to try to hit it to the right side of the field and move him over. Just know that plan and stick to it.
Yeah, it's a huge point in regards to, do you know your favorite pitch or the pitch that you know you hit the best? Do you know where it is, what it is?
Yeah,
That's a beautiful thing. If it's a middle fastball, right, then you wait for it. Less than 2 strikes. That's a plan. If we're swinging at curveballs in the dirt, less than 2 strikes, for me, that's an undisciplined hitter, right? But a disciplined hitter waits, okay, and understands, okay, I know my pitch. Or a situation may call for you to, if you're a right-handed hitter and there's a runner on second, take it to oppo to get that runner over to third for less than 2, if there's less than 2 outs. So then you're eyeing that outside pitch to make it easier for you to hit him over, right? So someone was saying how romantic it is, right? That there's a romance to it, but there's a notion of these situations within the game that, that's watching the game and knowing specifically, like we can watch a game internationally and we can know who has that advanced knowledge just by, how they approach their swings less than 2 strikes. We can tell when pitchers give away their pitches. I'm pretty good at that, by the way. And you can also tell guys who know situational baseball, and the importance of that. But that comes with learning it and knowing it and staying in it. And so Tucker's just right, there's a thing called CPT that we use in the game, and it stands for control, plan, and trust before every pitch. So controlling your thoughts, you can do it a number of ways. So let's say you're a little bit nervous, right? And your thoughts are going awry or you're feeling some butterflies. You can control it a number of ways, all right? Literature shows that, sometimes I have my baseball players wear rubber bands, right? And they smack the rubber band. They put the bat between their legs and smack that rubber band. And once you snap it, and that feeling means, okay, I'm controlling my thoughts. Anything that's negative, anything that's past, anything that's future is gone. I'm staying in the present. I'm controlling it. I've also had baseball players spit. As soon as that spit comes out, that represents the distracting, the nervousness, any type of thought that's other than staying in the present, right? I've even had athletes use focal points. It could be a flag or a scoreboard. As soon as you look at that scoreboard, okay, it's on. I'm controlling it. Then the P in the CPT, before every pitch, is plan. You make a plan. You know the situation, how many outs, what runners on, and you're pretty much already there in between pitches anyhow, but then if it's 3 and 1, you remind yourself, okay, 3 and 1, I'm in charge. What's my pitch? Down the middle, I'm waiting for that thing. Unless it is a beautiful hanging curve and you can get it, right? All right. But you have that plan. And then the T in the CPT program stands for trust. Trusting yourself. Saying the positive affirmations of, I can do this. All right, I want to hit the ball hard. Whatever it is that you want to say that's positive, confident-oriented, right, to yourself. And it takes time, but he does it. I've had a lot of players that I work with in the major leagues from a sports psych perspective. That's one of the first things we do over and over again in their play, even in practice, between pitches. They CPT it. They control, they plan, and they trust. And once you get it down, it takes about 4 seconds, right? 3 seconds. and you're ready to go. But you even do it on defense, right? You can even do it on the mound, catching it, CPT, and then get ready. Okay? And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that tomorrow, but it's very, very important. You know, the questions that you're asking are awesome. You know, you're thinking second level here, and that's good. Regarding pinch hitting and regarding some of the nerve stuff, as well as planning. Those are really good questions. What other questions do you have? Anything else? What question do you have? You're starting a game. You're starting right now. You're starting to play. Do you have any questions about the game?
So, Coach, he's asking, what's the correct way to start the game, basically?
In regards to
with not that.
Awesome.
Attack the fastball.
Yeah. How old is he?
12.
12. That's great. Yeah, at your age,
Have fun.
have fun and swing hard.
Rip it and rip it.
Guys, you have a program for after the fatal error in the infield.
After a fatal error,
Yeah.
you gotta forget about it, man.
That's where that control happens. You know, that's where you see these rubber bands, spit, get it out. In fact, at Tennessee, we used to, when I was the sports psych guy there, and when they made their World Series run, we put a toilet in the dugout. And after every error, they literally would flush that toilet, representing it's done. Flush it. All right? Literally feeling the flush. Flush it.
So, one thing that I was always told, especially after a bad at-bat, like let's say you're at 6th inning, you have runners in scoring position, and you K to end the inning. Majority of the time, the next ball that's put into play is going to be hit to you. So, if you're still worried about the last play, the last error that you made, there's no way that you're going to be prepared to make the next play. So if you dwell on the next play or worry too much about or what's about to happen next, you're not ready for what's about to happen right now. So you have to stay in the present, putting it in the rearview mirror.
Awesome. Well, that means it's 7 o'clock, and that means pizza and beer time. If I'm not mistaken. Right? Before that, do we have something that...
May I have your attention, please? Because I had a pizza and beer, which you're invited, all invited, including my son, please. He's older. And the crucial thing, part of this clinics is also one thing. Before you go for pizza and beer, you shall do something instead of your ancestors that they did. I mean, once, Michael, will you help me?
Yeah.
Will you please sit?
Yeah, this is great. So this is a cultural center, so we're doing more culture.
There will be kind of torture. I don't think so, but
torture.
No, not torture, but once you have to suffer because of the sin that your ancestors did. Once in the early 20s, I mean, before the Second World War, when Hoover, before he became the president of the US, and before he invited our very famous pianist and composer for a concert.
I've got everything here. Maybe
But you cannot read it. You have to.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It takes 2
And-
minutes.
Yeah, do it, do it.
Maybe it takes 2 minutes.
It'll be a good history.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
so-
my English is not perfect.
You're
But
okay.
I try to do my best.
This is great.
This is a true story that happened in 1892 at Stanford University. An 18-year-old student was struggling to pay his fees. He was an orphan and not knowing where to turn for money. He came up with the right idea. A friend and he decided to host a musical concert on campus to raise money for their education. I hope you understand. They reached out to the great pianist Ignacy Paderewski. His manager demanded a guaranteed fee of $2,000 for the piano recital. A deal was struck, and the boys began to work to make the concert a success. The big day arrived, Paderewski performed at Stanford, but unfortunately, they had not managed to sell enough tickets. The total collection was only $1,600. Disappointed, they went to Paderewski and explained their plight. They gave him the entire 1,600 plus the check for the balance of $400. They promised to honor the check and as soon as possible. No, said Paderewski, this is not acceptable. He tore up the check, returned the 1,600 and told to the boys, here's $1,600. Please deduct whatever expenses you have incurred. Keep the money you need for your fees. And just give me whatever is left. The boys were surprised and thanked him profusely. It was a small act of kindness, but it clearly marked out Paderewski as a great human being. Why should he have two people he didn't even know? We all come across situations like this in our lives, and most of us only think, if I will help them, what would happen to me? The truly great people think, if I don't help them, what will happen to them? They don't do it expecting something in return. However, the Paderewski, he was a great leader. He was the Prime Minister of Poland. But in the beginning of the Second World War, Poland was totally devastated. And the people were starving. There were nothing, just any clothes and nothing to eat. And he reached out to the US Food and Relief Administration for help. The head there was a man called Herbert Hoover, who later went on to become the US president. Hoover agreed to help and quickly shipped tons of food grains to feed the starving Polish people. The calamity was averted. Paderewski was relieved. He decided to go across to meet Hoover and personally thank him. When Paderewski began to thank Hoover for his noble gesture, Hoover quickly interjected and said, "You shouldn't be thanking me, Mr. Prime Minister. You may not remember this, but several years ago, you helped two students go through college in the US. I was one of them."
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And what's what the purpose? They didn't sell enough tickets because there was a game, baseball game, and all the students went to this game, to this concert. That's why you have to suffer now and listen to Paderewski.
It's not a torture for you because it will last something about 4 or 5 minutes. But we thought about this event, this kind of performance.
This is great.
Your ancestors went for a ball game, and you can hear it for clinics, and you will listen.
That's great.
And we invited, especially for you, we invited very fine Polish piano master, Maestro
Maestro is going to play a famous menuet composed by Paderewski.
That's awesome.
That was the best punishment I've ever had. That was awesome.